problem, whether you thought there were threats, did you go directly to the president, or was there another mechanism you used to communicate with the White House, either in the Clinton administration or the Bush administration, or both, I guess?
Well, I mean, my procedures would normally be to communicate first with the Attorney General. On many occasions, after that communication, we would go to the White House. If it was a national security issue, we would certainly see the National Security Advisor. In the last year that Janet Reno and I served together, we actually had a routine meeting with the National Security Advisor, I'd say probably every 2 or 3 weeks. We had another one with Secretary Albright probably once a month. And the purpose of those meetings was to discuss not just counterintelligence and counterterrorism matters, but even other Department of Justice issues that had national security implications. On some occasions, I would go directly to the National Security Advisor. I did not have an experience in either administration of going directly to the President on a matter.
Okay. One of the questions that may be one of the most important that our Commission is charged with is looking at the intelligence agencies and seeing whether any changes ought to be made. Now, I read our staff statement as an indictment of the FBI for over a long period of time. You know, when I read things like that 66% of your analysts weren't qualified, that you didn't have the translators necessary to do the job, that you had FISA difficulties, that you had all the information on the fundraising, but you couldn't find a way to use it properly to stop terrorism. And that's without counting, of course, the things that were going on at the same time, Ruby Ridge or Waco or the Wen-Ho Lee case or the Hansen case or the lost laptops and firearms and all the rest. The present director, your successor, has a whole series of reforms that he is trying to put to make the agency work better. You tried reforms. You tried very hard to reform the agency. According to our staff report, those reforms failed. I guess my question to you is, looking at this director's efforts to reform the agency, can those reforms work, or should there be some more fundamental changes to the agency and the way we get our intelligence?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I take exception to your comment that your staff report is an indictment of the FBI. I think your staff report evidences some very good work and some very diligent interviews and a very technical, almost auditing analysis of some of the programs. I think the centerpiece of your executive director's report, as I heard it, came down to resources and legal authorities. So I would ask that you balance what you call an indictment, which I don't agree with at all, with the two primary findings of your staff. One is that there was a lack of resources, and two, there were legal impediments. With respect to your question, I certainly support and applaud the director's efforts. The Patriot Act, the Court of Review, a couple of $1 billion is certainly a big help when we're talking about changes. With respect to the jurisdiction of the FBI, I do not believe that we should establish a separate domestic intelligence agency with respect to counterterrorism. I think that would be a huge mistake for the country for a number of reasons. One, I don't think in the United States we will tolerate very well what in effect is a secret, state secret police. Even with all of the protections and the constitutional entitlements that we would subscribe with. Americans, I don't think, like secret police, and you would in effect be establishing secret police. Secondly, if you look at the models around the world where this has been tried, it hasn't worked very well in my opinion. The other thing, it would take a long time to integrate. If the Homeland Security Department and 170,000 people to be integrated is going to take a couple of years, standing up a brand new domestic intelligence agency would take a decade, and we would lose very precious time at a very dangerous time for the United States. If you look at some of the analyses of MI5 operations And you can look at the Bishopgate bombing. You can look at the Docksland bombing, the Troyan case. I'm sure your staff has looked at that. It's been found to be not very effective. In fact, one of the studies that I know your staff has looked at in the United Kingdom that looked at this actually said the FBI was a preferred model because it breaks down the barriers between enforcement and intelligence. A lot of the good work of this commission has been to identify the barriers that existed and still exist between intelligence and law enforcement. Standing up a separate intelligence agency will just increase those barriers. And if you thought the wall was a big one, that's a fortress in my view, and will make for a very ineffective counterterrorism program, and I think expose the country to dangers. So I think we ought to have the Department of Justice supervised by the Attorney General, FBI agents who are schooled in the Constitution, who have a transparent operation with respect to oversight by courts as well as by Congress. Give them the tools, give them the legal authority, give them the budget, and they'll do this job very well. It's not very different from looking at organized crime, from looking at counterintelligence, which in my view the Bureau has done exceptionally well for decades. The difficulty with the wall was that the wall that was set up in Janet Reno's guidelines of July 19th were completely appropriate with respect to counterintelligence cases, because counterintelligence cases happen in two dynamics. One, there's an investigation, and then there's either an indictment or an expulsion. Counterterrorism cases are completely different. Because of the threat, there's always an ongoing need to act and to use the intelligence to prevent attacks from taking place. So the wall is not an appropriate one with respect to counterterrorism, and that's been repaired both by the Patriot Act and the Court of Review.